All right, you're good to go. Great. All right. Good evening. Welcome. This is a regularly scheduled workshop of the City of Bangor City Council. Today is Monday, February 26th. Around the table, we have Councillor Leonard, Councillor Trimble, Councillor Dean, Councillor Hawes, Councillor Schaefer, Councillor Yakabaga, Councillor Fournier, myself, Council Chair Pelletier, and on Zoom, we have Councillor Fish. Also at the table, we have our City Manager, Deb Laurie, and Assistant City Manager, Courtney O'Donnell. Tonight, first thing up is a review of the draft Bangor City Council guidelines.
Yes, so this has been underway for some time. The last feedback was to look at including some additional provisions. So what I did also is I actually looked at what the Bangor schools do, as well as Penobscot County Commissioners. So, for example, under, Code of Conduct, this is taken, virtually, verbatim in a lot of ways from what the Bangor Schools Committee members use. The items, other minor items, proclamations and recognitions. A question was asked and Courtney had provided some backup, to the councils as a whole, and I realized it's not written anywhere, so I just included that here. I included, some communications, just so, that we are kind of codifying what we already do anyway. Again, the Code of Ethics, we added the additional, information as to how to seek advice if needing information from the Code of Ethics. I've also incorporated, later on in the policy, that the public comment is limited to 3 minutes, but it's at the council chair's discretion, which we're currently doing. I will add a piece that I did not include in here. That's very much how Penobscot County Commissioners operate, but they also make a distinction between they speak first to those who are residents of Penobscot County and those who are non-residents of Penobscot County. I didn't make that distinction in here as for whether or not you're a citizen of Bangor or not. I just left it broad for right now. So those are kind of the updates, and I know Councillor Dean is going to continue every time we do an acronym to add it, and I think SCADE is going to be one that we need to add because that came up last week. So
Which
just
could
looking-
not be described.
Correct. Amanda was going to, but I think John's kind of said, don't do that. So just looking if this is sort of at a place where people are comfortable, or if you want to, I would also view this as a living document and something that, we should probably, as things arise, come back and revisit. I think we've talked about the fact that over the years, it's been sort of folklore, because this is what we've always done. And I think being able to codify what we do and the expectations is helpful.
Okay, thank you for pulling
Hands
those
everywhere.
texts together. Yes, hands everywhere. Let's
Okay.
start here with Councillor Hawes.
I like the document. I think it read well. I think somebody new would really get the full understanding of it. I would like to see it put somewhere where when we review documents on
Yeah.
certain periods of time, that
Yeah.
we just go back and give it a quick look.
Sure.
If we find ourselves adding anything, like the acronyms and things, we could look at those, but
Okay.
good job.
Councillor Leonard?
Yeah, so first thing to mention is in regards to the Penobscot County Commissioners, do you know when we can get that language?
Sure, I have it here. I'm happy to make a copy for you.
Oh, sure, yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sure we're going to review this document again at some point in the future. So yeah, I'm happy to take that. I do have some notes and some concerns about
Okay.
this document. So the first one I want to touch upon is Code of Conduct.
Mhm.
Third bullet. So it reads, members will individually support the collective decision-making of the city council. If a member disagrees with the decision made by the city council, members will voice their opinion without personalizing the issue and without eroding the collective reputation of the city council.
Okay.
So my issue with this is if the city does something wrong, and let's say I personally am against what the city has done in its conduct, and I disapprove of how this is taken, this is a very broad approach to restricting the freedom of expression of an individual counselor, and I would appreciate either more specifics onto what that entails, or lighter language that either encourages a counselor to do so, but does not demand them.
Okay.
On under code of conduct, 5th bullet. Members will act with civility and preserve order and decorum during municipal meetings and will not delay or interrupt proceedings or refuse to comply with the orders of the council or the committee chair. So following the orders of the committee chair, the council chair, like, what are those orders?
Okay.
To not talk to the media, to not write testimonies, like what, so what powers does the chair have in this process? Because this seems to be, again, another overreach
Okay.
on counselors' First Amendment rights, and also the First Amendment rights of really the people of Bangor who elect said representative. I mean, and this is just another
Yeah.
note, but all counselors are supposed to have equal representative powers of expression. And so this seems to be counterproductive to the entire philosophy of having a council manager form of government. Code of conduct 6th bullet, which reads, members will make no disparaging remarks in or out of municipal meetings about other members of the council or their opinions. So the issue I have with this is, what if that counselor is a inherently bad person? What if they're a crook? So disparaging opinions, like, that's politics. If you're against disparaging words in a foreign government, you're in the long line of work. Civility is a luxury, it's not a right. And so I really do not think this bullet should belong in this guideline whatsoever. It goes against everything that the First Amendment stands for. So under communications, let me just scroll right down there.
Yeah.
So this is regarding testimony and letters. So I won't read it, but just to clarify, we have a constitutional right to be heard by the government as a citizen.
Yeah.
This infringes on that. If the word quote unquote encouraged were here, in terms of like going through the process of making sure that the city and the council chair and the council as a whole were part of the process, I would support that inclusion.
Okay.
But I'm not going to endorse anything that's restricting the advocacy of a leader who wishes to do service beyond the call of duty of a city councilor. So encourage, if that word's included, I'm fine
Okay.
with that. Otherwise, I don't agree with this whatsoever.
Okay.
Lastly, under ethics.
Yes.
So it says right here, so any city councilor, board, commissioner, committee member seeking the advice as to whether a particular situation constitutes an actual potential violation of code of ethics
Yeah.
shall submit a written testimony in the form of a council order describing the nature of the matter to the city council. If the city council feels an advisory opinion is necessary, it shall be adopted the order by majority vote referring to the matter of the Board of Ethics. So what happens if we have a majority of counselors that thwart any efforts for the ethics committee to be involved, if it's in the interest of the counselors or the majority of counselors to not call upon the ethics committee? That's a big glaring oversight. And so what I recommend is having multiple ways for the ethics committee to be called upon. One of which being, I think the area to call upon should be reduced. I think that a simple counselor with a second opinion of another counselor should be enough to call upon the ethics committee. I also think that allowing the city solicitor to call upon the ethics committee would also be an appropriate way to bring in the ethics committee. I also think a petition of the citizens of Bangor would be another way to also call upon the ethics committee. But also, we should have an internal process by which the ethics committee can call upon themselves if they deem so fit. This being the only option, a majority of counselors to call upon the ethics committee, it relies on the council to call foul on their own potential ethical dilemmas. Do you see the issue with that? I think we need to have more approaches to calling upon the ethics committee here. Those are all my notes.
Those are all your nits? Thank you.
Counselor Trumbull and then Counselor Schaefer.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with most of this. Actually, I had an issue with this, not an issue, but a comment on the same one in the communications. Under the third paragraph, not that it's needs to be lessened, just that I think we need to add some, it says testimonies, blah, 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 to other government or grants or agencies. I think also, I mean, if we're submitting an op-ed to the paper, it's been tradition that we've acted the same manner with op-eds. It's been
Okay.
reviewed and people signed off on it, and especially if it's an
Okay.
individual doing it, it's been a courtesy we've always done.
Counselor Schaefer?
Well, on the op-eds, there's certainly been an op-ed that recently was in a paper that was not. I would just like to point out that women who have written op-eds and have been called up, and we have a recent counselor who did that, and I actually agree with train service and all that, but I would like to see to make sure that there's some parity in that. The other piece with, just to clarify, on that fifth bullet point, Councilor Leonard is concerned about refuse to comply with the ordinance. It clearly states, though, it's during municipal meetings, and I think that what you are looking for in that, I'm okay with that, because what you're looking for in that is not to have somebody not usurp the chair's gavel and take over and try to override the chair's organization of the meeting. And that's sort of basic Robert's Rules of Order. That's how meetings run. So I have no problems with that.
Counselor Yakvaga?
Under Code of Ethics, and I think I had conversations with Debbie before about this.
Yeah.
I think it's missing what it takes if a counselor wants to bring an issue to the Code of Ethics.
Okay.
So the language is still not addressing what I discussed.
No,
with you.
this
Yeah.
just reflects the current ordinance.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
think
but-
what you're talking about is more along the lines of what Councillor Leonard raised for concerns.
Yes, because
Okay.
that's exactly what I, what
Okay.
I had in mind before, and I think it's still not there.
Okay.
Counselor Poirier?
I agree with Councilor Schaefer regarding bullet 5. In bullet 5 clearly states municipal meetings. Regarding bullet 6. I think it's just appropriate that any member of council will not be making disparaging remarks about other councilors in or out of meetings. It goes back to the civility issue. What's the right way to deal with an issue? You might confront the person individually, but I don't think you would say disparaging remarks during a council meeting or speaking to others about it. Regarding the Code of Ethics and the majority, I get what you're saying, but I still think we're a self-governing group, and I feel comfortable. Over the last 100 years, I think the group has done a very good job at what should be going to ethics and what shouldn't be going to ethics. Those are my comments.
Other comments? Counselor Leonard?
Just one more, if no one else has any comments on this. This conversation about what are essentially the guidelines for how, Bangor City Council is to operate. I view these as guidelines and not established rules at the end of the day. And so I will personally do my best to adhere to guidelines as long as everyone else seems to do so as well. That being said, I think this entire process really begs the question for us to seriously consider a philosophical conversation as to how the city operates as a municipal body. I have stated publicly in the past that I am not in favor of a municipally incorporated body that operates as a council manager basis. What I would like to see in the future is a future workshop where we talk about two subject matters that can be in two different categories. One of which is the discussion of restoring executive powers for a mayoral form of government. And a second workshop could be discussing the ways that councilors are represented in their respective neighborhoods in the city. As of right now, the way that councilors are chosen is by at-large wards. So whenever a councilor is running for an election, they are not representing individual neighborhoods. They are representing the entire city as a whole. This causes a lot of neighborhoods to be heavily unrepresented. And this is a discussion just as equally as important as the mayor discussion that needs to be had by city council.
Are there any other comments on this draft document? Okay, so we can
I will-
either
Mhm.
give the city manager an opportunity to revise some of the proposed language. Or, yes, Councilor Trumbull.
Just as I read this over the weekend, the only thought I had was similar to what Council Leonard just said, it's the guidelines. I mean, we thought about putting any teeth into this where, you know, if somebody egregiously disregards the guidelines, there would be some type of sanctions. I mean, again, then right now, if somebody said, you know, I'm gonna do X, there's no penalties or anything like that. Have you thought about any type of teeth in this ordinance, on these guidelines? I mean, what could we put into? I mean, you know, there's nothing too serious you can do, I guess, but I mean, it's just to hope that people follow the guidelines.
I think the remedy available is censure. If somebody blatantly disregards
Right.
the guidelines, I mean, some of these things are, you know, guidelines, election of the council chair is by guideline, I would imagine it means it's something that we can change as we need to. But, you know, the election of the chair, the role of the chair, these are things that are part of how we operate. And so perhaps, I don't know if guideline is the right word.
I picked guideline I think I picked that 5 months ago when we started having this conversation. And it was really to the fact that we didn't have sort of how we operate written down anywhere. And this was a goal, was to write it down in one place so that it was accessible to everyone, the counselors, the public. Most communities have adopted guidelines along these lines, and they are actually posted on their website. It goes through the whole iteration of a meeting, which is included in here. So it is meant to just be how we will agree to operate, subject to change at any time based on the desire and the will of the council. It wasn't meant to be punitive in any way. It was just meant to say, this is how we agree to conduct ourselves, and this is the format that we're going to use until we revisit it and decide it isn't working and we'd like to do something different.
Councilor Haas.
That has been a conversation over many years about how do we put teeth into a document like this when the people are typically, you know, the volunteers, they run for the office, you hope that they'll play nice and be respectful to each other and to the constituents and whatever. And I remember a past solicitor, I asked that question to him, he said, you got two choices. And I thought, oh, I shouldn't have asked this question. And so I asked him, I said, what are the two choices? And he said, censure or recall. Because of the fact they're volunteers and they're put there by a voting body. He said, those are essentially your two, and really recall is to remove someone, but censure is to kind of maybe get them to understand the guidelines a little better or whatever. But I think he's right. There's just, and you know, I would hate to see us put so much effort into putting teeth into this that we don't really fine tune it and make it a nice living document that we can go back to and check in on it periodically, because you start that other discussion and it can go for a long time with no real resolution. So.
Yeah. And it was never my intent coming in. So I've been here for a long time, but in this role for 2 years, because yes, it'll be 2 years on Wednesday, in case you're counting.
I mean, if you like.
So, I mean, I understood sort of the process and protocol, but as we've had turnover in the organization, as we have turnover in the council, the ability to look back at a written document and go, oh, okay, that's what it means to resolve. A resolve is an appropriation, but it's also, you know, the acceptance of an act that has happened after the fact. So I know many of you struggle coming in as new counselors. I've watched you going, what is this language? So just trying to create a document that helps identify that. That's all.
The only other comment was the Board of Ethics. And in the past, over the years, we have used the
Yeah.
Board of Ethics probably more frequently than people realize, because they don't always have to come back and report publicly. But as far as the majority, it's never been an issue. If someone on the council said, you know, I really think we need to have another opinion of this, I'd like to see it go to the Board of Ethics. Most of the time it went without any, you know, people backed it and it went off. So I'm not real concerned about that majority piece. Are you thinking one counselor wanting to send something? Was that your thought process?
I can give a very specific example that I'm not going to at this point, but effectively, if there is a serious issue regarding an ethical dilemma that the council has, we owe it to the citizens to make sure that that ethical dilemma can expediently approach that committee as quickly as possible, with as many different avenues of approach to get there as possible.
Counselor Fish?
With realtors, we have, professional standard.
For a minute, we're having trouble with your audio.
Oh, goodness.
No, it's us.
It's us, not you. Hang
He's
on.
gotta turn it up.
Is it on? Yeah, okay.
May just be the TV.
Yep, I think it is. All right, Carolyn, you should be okay.
Let me try it. How's this? Testing, testing.
No,
Keep talking.
keep talking.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Out of that, it sounds
Am I
like.
in?
No.
Not yet.
Be quiet.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Was that loud?
Yes.
Yes. It wasn't you, it was us.
It was my fault. All right, you're all set.
With realtors, we've had professional standards for, I don't know, they say we were the first real organized group, so for a long time. And we have arbitration, and then of course ethics is broken down into 2 boards out of the professional standards committees. And it's really sort of a format or a guideline for the expectation of how you're professionally going to behave toward each other and how you handle differences between each other. And then there's a panel, an ethics panel, which is an unbiased group that then applies a sanction, which is based on previous sanctions similar to the issues. So, reading these, wasn't surprised. They look familiar to me. I don't have the experience with the city council, so I really look toward others, toward the good suggestions I've heard tonight. But I do think that the bottom line is that it encourages us to approach each other and try to take care of things internally before we broadcast it elsewhere, which is, I don't think, good for ourselves, we as a city, or really does the citizens any good.
So it seems to me we have three paths here, and I'll take a motion on any of them. One is to amend using some of the suggestions that were made tonight. The second is to vote to adopt as is, and the third is to not adopt the changes.
Is her hand up again?
Yes.
She's-
Okay.
Counselor Fish?
Yes.
Oh, she did.
Would you
I'm
like to
sorry.
make a motion?
Maybe she didn't put her hand down.
I think her hand.
I don't think I can hear.
Okay, your
Okay.
hands down. Counselor Watts?
I would make a motion that we, have this go back, incorporate the additions that we added this evening, and that we do adopt it, or put it up for adoption,
Could you clarify what you mean by additions you made this evening?
the edits.
Was that what everybody said? Because
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not on board with whatever.
Well,
all the
then-
additions.
She would have to clarify, because I didn't write them out down.
So I had, about sort of reviewing the language about this collective decision-making. I heard Counselor Leonard, I didn't hear additional. I guess I'm trying to find, I think there was something about under communication to encourage to change that language, to clear it up for an op-ed piece. I will
Mhm.
to point out that I think it needs to clarify that if you're doing those things it's implied, but probably it should be spelled out with your title.
Mhm.
Because I agree, you don't give up your rights as individuals, but if you were gonna use your title of Bangor City Council or City Councilor, I believe that that's the process that should be followed, if that feels.
Could we go through the additions, just do like a thumbs up
Yeah,
and
yeah.
down on each of them, so you know where we're at?
I do have a clarification on the title, because I think
Okay,
that there can be a case where you write a letter to the editor and the opinion board says, oh, that's Gretchen. Gretchen is a Bangor City Councilor. And if they print it with that without your actually submitting
Knowing
it
it,
under your
yeah.
title, I think that could be a concern as
Okay.
far as using the title. And so I don't know what the solution is there, or if it's, or if someone will say, I am a Bangor City Councilor, but I'm writing this as a citizen. But then you've used your title but it's also, you have a name like Gretchen Schaefer and you live in Bangor and you write something, I'm pretty sure they're gonna.
you're gonna
know who
put
you
two
are.
and two together?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And I think that is covered, for example, in our current code of ethics, where we talk about that if you are, as a city councilor presenting testimony or a letter and you're expressing it as your opinion, it's okay to acknowledge that you're a city council, but you're doing this in your standing as an individual citizen, and it doesn't represent necessarily the views of the city council or the city of Bangor. And I think as long as you don't, and I think there's a way to kind of maybe soften this a little bit, that as long as it isn't submitted with city councilor. If they add it after the fact, we can't help that, and I get that. But it does say submitted in here. And if I can clarify maybe a little bit that use of title.
I think clarifying what entitles a use of title would be
Right.
helpful. That would be an edit that I would like to
Yeah.
see.
So the use of title section is pretty well laid out in the code of ethics, but I could make a reference to it here.
That'd be good.
For clarification, please see. Okay,
Counselor Dean?
Yes, are you suggesting that if we do use our title, that we should first approach the council with our intentions for something public? Is that the differentiation between using a title and not using a title?
Yes, because the ethics, the code of ethics lays out when you should and should not use your title. Obviously, if you're attending a public meeting, you're likely attending as a counselor deemed. If you are, I'm trying to think of an odd thing where you would maybe, if you wanted to submit a letter, asking that the city of Bangor be allowed to secede from the Union of the state of Maine, I would suggest you not use your title of city councilor because that is a decision of the council and not a decision or a position of the entire body and not a position of an individual councilor that we should be putting out there.
Councilor Porter?
So a couple of years ago, I wrote an op-ed supporting Arttober. I did not bring it before the council. I just thought it's just a natural thing to be able to do that. Maybe I was wrong. I probably was after seeing it, but I don't think there was no harm, no foul there.
And it's all well until there's a harm and a foul.
Right.
All right, so the communications piece is I've got to tighten that up to kind of refer to the use of title.
Can we go through each of
Yeah.
the places where you'd like to make a change? And then we can just give things a thumbs up or down.
Okay. So I guess I'm gonna go through all of the points raised by each individual counselor, because it would be helpful, just because other counselors didn't necessarily say yes, that, I just want to make sure. So, under code of conflict, the third bullet, members will individually support the collective decision-making of the city council. If a member disagrees with the decision made by the city council, members will voice their opinion without personalizing the issue and without eroding the collective reputation of the city council.
If you would like to edit that, thumbs up, please. No? Two, okay, yep, two.
Okay. Members will make no disparaging remarks in or out of municipal meetings about other members of the council or their opinions.
If you'd like to edit that, please indicate. One.
Okay. Oops, I skipped one, sorry. Members will act with civility and preserve order and decorum during municipal meetings and will not delay or interrupt proceedings or refuse to comply with the orders of the council or the committee chair.
Like to edit that? One.
Under communications, I will edit the testimonies and letters of support to include op-eds and clarify that when using your title, please refer to this ethics portion that dictates or that outlines when to use your title. And that I'll try to represent that, understanding that individuals obviously will always have the opportunity to submit testimonial letters of support for things that they have a personal connection with, as long as it isn't under the city council title, if it hasn't been reviewed by the city council.
Do you agree with that edit? Thumbs up? That's 7, 8. Counselor Fish? Yes, 9.
It gets as to whether or not, to ask the city solicitor to determine if there is, an ability or an option or what those options look like to change how items are referred to the code of ethics beyond what's currently laid out in the ordinance. There were several iterations given. I think that would need a little bit more time, not opposed to it, but if you'd like to have us look at that specifically, it would be helpful to know that.
I think it would be worthwhile to look
Okay.
at it. Anyone else Anyone disagree?
Okay,
Okay,
all right. Um. And I guess I'm gonna get to, again, we had the 3-minute time limit. Obviously, that is at the city council's chair's discretion. Did you want to make any distinction as to residents of Bangor or not at this point? My thought is no, but I leave that up to you. Let the Bangor residents speak first. I know it's not in there. It's
Yeah.
just something I was looking at.
it's a full council decision, not my decision, but I'm happy to hear from anyone who makes the effort to come speak.
Okay, that's what I thought we were.
I do think at some point, it might be good for us to consider whether public comment is at the beginning or the end of a meeting.
Okay.
There are pros and cons to both.
Yeah. I think we had that conversation right after the Zoom bombing.
Yeah,
Because, you know, we had some concerns about inappropriateness, but I will also say we talked about the, you know, individuals come to the meeting to have their business completed and then, you know, so. And then the only other thing under policy administration is I did want to add, it seemed that there was an interest in, creating sort of a frequency of review. So that it doesn't just sit here. If it's meant to be a living, breathing document, it ought to come back as a living, breathing document. So should it be, obviously, if the council adopts something like this will be part of your every new council's packet. So maybe it's, you know, at least annually. And then obviously, if there are ever any issues, we can raise it throughout the year. Is that?
see, heads nodding, any objection?
Okay,
Okay,
all right, can do that.
thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Next up on the agenda, we have a discussion of potential resolution. This is related to the public comment at the city council meeting last week and the many emails that we've received since. For those in the room who may be here to listen to the conversation, so you know, we do not typically ask for public comment at council workshops. Council workshops are intended to be a time for the council to discuss things that we have not yet had the time as a body to consider. So that's what we'll be doing tonight.
So I guess to follow up on that, again, we set this aside as a council and as a body, you haven't had an opportunity to have a discussion. You had a number of individuals request that you consider adopting a resolution at our last council meeting. Since then, you've also had a number of emails. There have been, as you can imagine, we have a varied base of citizens and we have a varied base of opinions. The opinions in general seem to have fallen into what I'll call one of three areas. There was adopt a resolution. There was adopt a resolution that is sort of in keeping of, you know, recognizing the horrific acts that happen across this country, across this world, and wishing the best for all citizens, to not taking any action at all. So, and some of that was related to, you know, does it really fall within the purview of the Bangor City Council? Seemed to be a recurrent theme in that group. So having said that, this is your opportunity to kind of see where you want to land. I was hesitant to draft any kind of a language based on the variety of opinions that we had received.
Thank you. Thoughts?
I'll kick it off for you, Karen.
Council.
We gotta get started someplace. One, and this is obviously a very emotional topic for whatever side, wherever you are on this. People have very strong and emotional feelings. One, it's not to me about whether we have passed, how you feel about a ceasefire resolution. It's about, is the city of Bangor City Council, is that our role to be involved in a ceasefire resolution? I mean, obviously, the events since the horrific events of October 7th have been horrific as well. So, I mean, I don't think it's, anybody's taking a side either way here. I mean, obviously, the terrorist attack was awful. What's happened since the terrorist attack is pretty awful as well. So, it's awful to see what's happened and to watch the news at night and to see the world events, and hopefully the government will, hopefully, I think our position now is we're working towards a ceasefire, but that doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, my feelings about it don't matter. It's what I think as a city councilor, should we be taking a position? I mean, I felt when I sat at the meeting 2 weeks ago, I felt like I was a General Assembly of the UN. I mean, it's not, I just don't think it's our role as a city council to be, that we can even be helpful in taking a position on any of these things. So I'm in the camp of not to do anything, because I just don't think it's, I mean, I'm in my, I don't know, 14th year, and I followed the council for years. I don't think there's been conflicts and wars for years since I've been on the council. And before, I don't think the city of Bangor's ever taken, the council's ever taken a position on any of these things. So I don't see why things have changed now.
Thank you. Counselor Fish, and then we'll come back here.
I reiterate what, previous counselor, had just said, and reading all the emails, I think we've had a lot of people, residents of Bangor, ask why we would be focusing our attention on this when we have a lot of issues, that we should be focusing on as counselors for the city of Bangor. I did ask if we've ever had a resolution in the past, even when we've had world wars and major conflicts and genocides across the world, and we have not ever done a resolution. So some citizens have questioned why now. And I think individually, we all want world peace. Who doesn't? And I think individually, we all have the right to express and act on those desires as much as we want. But I also feel that in the capacity as we hold in the seat for the citizens of Bangor and the job we have at hand for the city of Bangor, that it's just not the platform for it, nor our job for it. And as much as we think it would be well intended to adopt a resolution, I think, especially from the expression of some that have emailed us, it may not be interpreted as well as we might intend it to be. I also think that, who are we to suggest world affairs when we have issues in our own city, with the issues we have, with people that are hostage to substance abuse. We have children in our own city being hurt or killed by predators. And, we all want world peace. And I think individually we can all do that. But I just don't think that this is the platform for it.
Counselor Schaefer?
I'll just follow up. I don't think that we should set the precedent because quite frankly, there's so much horror in the world. If we start setting a precedent that we take a position on it as a council, it distracts from the actual job that we are meant to do as a council. We do not have the influence or the power to change anything. I don't think there's a person at this table that isn't horrified by the evening news and by the things that are happening. And I don't think, and I don't know, I know I have a couple personal connections to things that have happened over there that I am holding those people in my thoughts and thinking about them. And even though I have those connections, I just don't think that it is the job of our council to do that. We don't take a position on things that Herman does. I mean, this is not part of what Bangor City Council does. There's so much awful in the world. If we started to do resolutions for each and every awful thing, we would not be able to move forward with working on the boring job of running a city. So I do not support a resolution at this time.
Counselor Haas?
I would agree with that. I think we have to stick to the business at hand. I don't think a resolution from the Bangor City Council, although I would like to think it would make a difference, would really make any major changes there. It doesn't mean like Council Schaefer said, that we're not with those people. But over the years, we've had multiple requests to do them, and if you do one, where do you stop doing them? Because then if you have too many, they're even more ineffective. There's been multiple events prior to this that we could have, had we been so inclined to do a resolution. But now this one's here and we didn't do anything about those, and does that, it seems to lessen the importance, and when it's really all just horrible. And I don't think we can change it by doing a resolution that we do at a council meeting and then set it aside. We have to become involved in other ways, not by a resolution. So I would not be in favor of doing a resolution.
I'm brought back to the recent Bangor City Council guidelines. And under powers and duties, it states fundamentally, the powers of the city council are to be utilized for the good of the community and its residents, to provide for health, safety, and general welfare of the citizenry. The city council is a nonpartisan policy-making and law-making body of the city. I fear that resolving for one group could end up offending another group. We have to look at Bangor as a whole. And I know that I've reached out to many people who have different views. Don't want to take sides because I think it's absolutely horrific. I was very moved by everyone that spoke at the last council meeting. I mean, moved to tears. It's absolutely horrific. But I do feel that we need to look at Bangor as a whole. And we also need to figure out whether or not Bangor is even justified in making a resolve for something that could possibly hurt others in our community.
Other comments? Council Fournier?
I have to agree with everything that's been said. And first and foremost, it's everyone wants peace. No question about it, hands down. But to me, the issue at hand is the focus is on the city. And there are city issues that need to be tackled. And we're the group that does that. We should not be getting involved in international affairs. That is way above my pay grade. And the fact that if we had a resolve that came out of the city of Bangor, there's no control. We would have no control over what happens with that resolve. I mean, I don't know what it solves. So therefore, I do not recommend that we do a resolve.
Councilor Yakbaga.
So I don't know where to start. I respect all of these different opinions, no, same opinions, and I'm gonna present a different opinion. When this whole thing started, someone reached out to me about a month and a half ago, asking me, how about you do this? Like they did it in the city of Portland. And I paused. I did not want this to happen. I did not want to start this. So I decided that, nope, it's not me. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna work on it. Then it happened that it was presented by a Jewish member of the community who thought that he was horrified by the events of October 7th and then the retaliation that followed. So it was presented by a Jewish member of the community. The resolution that he presented, it was co-written by the Jewish community in the city of Portland. So the language used, it was co-written by the Jewish community there. I know we have different Jewish communities between here and there. But when he reached out to me, that was a couple of days before the city council meeting. And I thought, I think the language is appropriate, and it's, and since it's co-written by the Jewish community there. So yeah, maybe you'll have a chance to present it to the city council. That's how it all started. So we had people who came last time and they talked in favor of the resolution and I support this resolution regardless if I agree with the rest or not. Even though I know one of the suggestions was more maybe acceptable for the Jewish community in Bangor. But it did not even call for a permanent ceasefire. So anyway, here I want to respond to a couple emails that we received as a council where I thought the language was intimidating. I don't want to say it threatening, but it was intimidating, and I don't accept that language. First of all, I did not bring this resolution to the city council. I was not the one who did it. I support it, yes, but I did not bring it. Why the city council never passed a resolution before? That's not a question that, I'm gonna answer. I don't know, but I think everyone can see the millions who are still protesting all around the universe for this Palestinian cause. And I think that speaks volume. One of the points that was mentioned in this specific email and in multiple emails, we have a lot of issues on hand that we have to take care of. Yes, absolutely. That's why we have to address this, because our tax money, it goes to support killing people, innocent people, instead of using this money to develop our town, the infrastructure, the problems that we have, the homeless individuals everywhere. Yes, we need this money, and that's why this is, for me, the right place to address this problem. That's why it is not international issue. It affects us as a town, as a city, and the services that our community deserves. The people in this community deserve, because they pay taxes. And our tax money, the amount that every citizen has to pay, it's increasing, and people are complaining. Our schools need more money. Our infrastructure needs more money. That's why it is an issue for us to consider. And it is not something that, we should not because, it's international. No, it's affecting our taxpayers' money. So this is another one. Another point that was stated in one of the emails, and I thought that was intimidating as well, when that specific person mentioned attacking the state of Israel or the Israeli government, it's equal to anti-Semitism. And this is very dangerous to touch on. You don't confuse the two. We know how to use this language. If any Jewish member in this community experiences anti-Semitism, I'm the first one to stand up. And the Jewish friends in this community, they know this very well. I'm the first one to stand up for them. So let's not confuse those terms. We can't conflate those two terms. We should not do that. What else I want to talk about? I put some points from the emails we received. I want to mention one point. Right now, if it's about our call for humanity. What's happening now? It's forget about governments, forget about armies. It's about people starving to death. It's documented in front of our eyes. We have a Jewish person in this community who came to us and who presented this resolution. It's a call for ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, release all of the hostages, and allowing humanitarian aid. What's so like scary about this resolution? Why do they think it's gonna affect the Jewish community? I do believe the actions of the Israeli government is what's affecting the Jewish community, and it's causing rise in anti-Semitism and causing rise in Islamophobia as well. Because when they dehumanize Palestinians and call them subhuman and animals, it's affecting not only Palestinians in the US, but Muslims. It affects me as a Muslim woman wearing a scarf. I can be a target. So to say that, it's anti-Semitic, I'm sorry, I refuse the use of this language. So calling for ceasefire is a human action to take. It's, the way I see it, having a moral compass, it means acting on this. This is how I see it. Thank you.
Councilor Leonard?
This is absolutely a decision that falls under the purview of a city council, whether we want to implement it or not. And the reason why is because we right now have a government at the federal level that is not listening to the majority of American citizens. And 80% of Democrats want a ceasefire. Over 70% of independents want a ceasefire. And a minority, but a vast minority of Republicans want a ceasefire. This is over 60% of Americans want a ceasefire right now. I have a prepared statement that I want to deliver. And just know for everyone, this is written in the guise of not necessarily from a secular point of view or a religious point of view. I write this from my own experience regarding military history, regarding imperialist history, and my own perspective as a veteran of the United States Army. So I want to start by referring to some comments I appreciated 5 days ago from Congressman Smith, who represents Washington's 9th congressional district. Before I do so, I do want to start by condemning both Hamas and the Israeli government for their respective grotesque terrorist attacks and war crimes that have been conducted on innocent children and civilians. At the end of this tragedy, my hope is that all enemies of peace and humanity are brought to justice. Mr. Smith's statement showcases how much the needle has moved in the halls of the Capitol. His call for continued efforts toward a ceasefire is signaling that Americans, Palestinians, and the world's call for an end to hostilities is paramount. A ceasefire must occur. A ceasefire is not just important for Palestinians and Israelis, it is paramount in order to stabilize a region of the world that is wrought with chaos due to the fallout of America's interventions to play kingmaker in countries that did not play along with America's imperialist practices. Mr. Smith adds, quote, "The current situation is not sustainable. Further, the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza has created an escalating regional conflict that threatens Israel's long-term security, a plan for a two-state solution, and the stability in the Middle East." End quote. The global economy is not stable, and the crisis that unfolds before us risks spreading to the United States' finite and expensive resources across multiple fields of conflict. This situation is dire, dark, and dangerous. Mr. Smith later in his statement adds, quote, "Continuing down the same path risks the safety of the remaining hostages and even greater humanitarian crisis in Gaza and a wider regional conflict that threatens U.S. national security interests," end quote. So I respect Mr. Smith's statement and his pressure on the Biden administration to move toward a ceasefire. While I do not agree with everything in the statement, I can admire anyone who is trying to push the needle in the right direction. One area that I feel responsible to elaborate on where I disagree with Mr. Smith is the notion of a, quote, "mutual ceasefire." The enemy that is Hamas is a terrorist organization. Terrorists cannot be negotiated with, as their sole power lies in fear. Additionally, it is erroneous to conclude that Hamas represents a sovereign nation. This conflict is unlike all other conflicts happening in the world right now for a plethora of reasons. There is no sovereign state of Palestine. The Palestinian people do not have a military. They have no air force. They do not control their own water or electricity. They do not control any aspect of their lives living in an apartheid state. Israel effectively owns Palestinian people and has subjected them to live in an open-air prison. More than half of the citizens in this open-air prison are children, completely innocent and naive as to why their families and friends are being slaughtered at this very moment. All hospitals in the Gaza Strip have been razed to the ground. Safe zones like Rafah that the IDF claimed were secure for refugees were complete falsehoods as the IDF assaulted refugees seeking that shelter. Actions like this by the IDF have led to more innocent civilians being killed than the entire membership that consists of Hamas. And as this illegal siege warfare, similar to the one that Saudi Arabia did amongst the Yemen people, this genocide continues to escalate. Politicians in the Israeli parliament openly demand for literal genocide of Palestinians. Many of Prime Minister Netanyahu's closest political allies unapologetically call for the deaths of literal children, referring to them as nothing more than animals. A two-state solution, which the vast majority of the world is calling for in order to end the hostilities that persist because the apartheid state Israel is conducting, is bluntly dismissed by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu has recently laid out his plan for post-ceasefire. Ignoring the pleas of the entire world, he refuses to acknowledge implementing a two-state solution. Instead, Prime Minister Netanyahu advocates for the continuation of an open-air prison, but now wants to seal off the border Gaza shares with Egypt. Netanyahu has called for the removal of the UNRWA, which is the current bedrock of humanitarian aid Gaza relies on. These actions are a clear signal that Netanyahu's vision for Gaza is to further constrict Palestinians, to treat them as a defeated people, and to further rob them of their land. And to be clear, the land is being robbed at this very moment. Israeli real estate websites are already listing oceanside properties in the leveled lands of Gaza. There have been brave journalists that have been trying to tell the world of all these crimes, to show the displacement, the homelessness, the starvation of 2 million people. But the Israeli Defense Forces have been incredibly effective at murdering journalists during this conflict and before. More journalists have been killed trying to cover this genocide than all of the journalists during the Vietnam War and the current Ukrainian-Russian war combined. This is not an accident. This is purposeful by the Israeli Defense Forces, as they have already been caught assaulting American journalists' First Amendment rights. Worse, pro-Israeli groups have now been caught red-handed as acting editors for mainstream news organizations such as CNN and the Washington Post, making certain to dispel any and all negative coverage of Israel to American audiences, despite the fact that we see what is happening on the ground from social media accounts. The Israeli Defense Forces have just been a catastrophic failure of epic proportions. Pope Francis has declared the heinous actions of the IDF to be acts of terrorism. Israel has yet to comply with the World Court ruling that Israel is, quote, plausibly committing genocide, end quote, and needs to de-escalate their actions. Hundreds of countries around the world have condemned Israel's actions in the slaughter of innocent civilians and children, yet Prime Minister Netanyahu is able to continue to operate as he is because of the unwavering support of the United States government and President Biden. Just to be clear, the United States gives $14 billion in military aid that's being used to predominantly kill children. That equates to roughly $80 per American citizen donating to the slaughter of Palestinian children. The reason why I bring this fact up is to make it clear that this genocide is just as much of a local issue as it is an international one. We are elected representatives of the people of Bangor, and we have a duty and an obligation to represent our citizens. And from what I am hearing, majority of our citizens are demanding President Biden implement and force a ceasefire that the Israeli government implement. So I am more than happy to advocate for United States Special Forces to assist the IDF to hunt down the leaders of Hamas, like President Obama did with Osama bin Laden, and to further assist peacekeeping operations and nation-building efforts for the Palestinian people. I am more than happy to increase the aid for Israel and the Palestinian people if it means a ceasefire happens and we can begin the work on a safe two-state solution. I am more than happy to call for all these efforts because, to echo what Congressman Smith warned earlier, quote, "The situation is not sustainable." Being a leader is not easy. Being a leader means you have to make some hard decisions. Some of those decisions we make as leaders can keep us up late at night, causing us to ponder, did I do the right thing? I want to be clear. This is not one of those decisions we face today. Today, Bangor voters have elected leaders that hopefully are going to stand up to justice, calling for warmongers and terrorists in this conflict to cease all hostile actions and demand justice be delivered onto such criminals? Or do we stand for the continuing slaughter of children paid with our own taxpayer dollars? For me, the choice is very clear. And I promise you, the choice I make here in supporting a resolution for a ceasefire is not going to keep me up late tonight. I don't normally get personal, but I've been writing a lot more poetry recently to help me get through the death of my grandmother recently. And this is a poem that I wrote this weekend. The roar, a mighty symphony of might, a might, lone echo in the vast expanse. In legion's chorus, power takes its stance. Among mights, a shared vision for what's right.
That's a great poem, Joe.
Ms. John?
So I've been thinking about this a lot. In fact, I don't think I've thought about anything else for the last 2 weeks. You know, when it comes to taking a stance on human rights issues, I think many people who know me know that I don't shy away from making my opinion known and showing up with a picket sign and being at the front of the lines. My background in diversity and inclusion has taught me, though, that one of the most dangerous kinds of allyship is performative allyship. And so what I mean by that is words that don't accomplish much. And so as I'm asked to consider whether to sign on or adopt a resolution, I had to ask myself, what do I think this will accomplish? Do I think that Bangor City Council making a resolution to support a ceasefire, well, I believe that would be the right thing to do, would it actually move the needle? Or is it just words? I don't think anyone at the United Nations is sitting around waiting for Bangor to weigh in on what should happen next. But I also want every person in the city of Bangor to be seen, heard, and feel valued. I want them to know that their concerns matter to me. I want them to know that their hurt matters to me. And I understand why people come to municipal government, because we're the faces that you can see in front of you. Especially when people feel ignored or unheard by upper levels of government. They often wind up here at City Council because we're the people who will acknowledge that they exist and that they have something important to say. And I think it's important to acknowledge when folks take the time to show up here. So it's been a sleepless couple of weeks because I don't really know how to hold both of those things together. I do think that there is no harm in the city council making a more general statement in support of peace, in recognizing the dignity of each individual and the right of each person to live free from terror. But I don't think that's going to make anybody happy on any side of this issue, because that's not what is being asked. So I don't know that I have an answer for this. My gut tells me that it's not our role as a city council to take this on. My heart tells me otherwise, and I find myself stuck in the middle. Based on the conversation around the table, it doesn't appear that we have support for drafting a resolution. But I don't want to close the conversation without giving folks an opportunity to share additional thoughts. And I'm also willing to take a motion on this issue. Councilor Leonard,
I would like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution to call for a ceasefire.
is there a second?
Second.
With Councilor Fish online, we will need to do a roll call vote. Councilor Leonard?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so
Councilor
this
Campbell?
is just on if we're gonna put a resolution forward. It's not on the resolution or anything. It's just about whether we're gonna put it forward or not.
To draft a resolution.
Can any other, so is this like a regular meeting? Can any other motion be put forward?
Yes.
All right, I would move to indefinitely postpone the motion.
Second.
Are we voting to postpone it, to decline it, to accept it? Where are we?
Indefinitely postpone just ends it.
It ends it. It ends debate and you have to just
Okay.
vote.
So we're voting on postponing.
Indefinitely.
Roll call vote.
Okay, roll call vote. Councilor Leonard,
No.
Councilor Trumbull,
Yes.
Councilor Dean,
Yes.
Councilor Hawes,
Yes.
Councilor Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilor Yakbaga,
No.
Councilor Fournier,
Yes.
Councilor Fish.
Yes.
I am a no. Okay. Next,
Jane, motion?
what's that?
Yeah, oh, no.
Oh,
updates.
no, got manager updates.
Manager updates.
Yep. A couple of things. I just wanted to let folks know. I did, I think you've all heard or seen the concerns expressed by a number of students from UMA. I did have an opportunity to talk to Dean Sichter, last week. He did share with me, the additional security steps that they have taken on the campus for some period of time. They're also working on getting together a
Could you hold
meeting.
for a moment?
Sure.
To those in the room, if you need to have conversations, please leave the room. Thank you.
So I did have a conversation with them about the additional steps that they have undertaken. They are working on a meeting with students and administration, and they're actually inviting some of us here from the city. I don't know that that notice has gone out to the students yet, but it will be in early March. They have invited a representative from the police department, our deputy police chief, and I said, me too, so I do plan to attend. Obviously,
When did they put the fence? There's a fence they put up. When was
Yeah.
that done? November?
Yep. And they were just trying to create a sense of safety and
Right.
barrier from their properties. Yep. Obviously, we're concerned about the students, we're concerned about the individuals in the encampment, we want everybody in our community to feel safe. I will add that, I think you had all heard about, the incidents of gun violence that was in that area. It was not in the encampment, it was on university property, you can see how vast that property is. As we've shared, the individuals involved with that were not part of the encampment. But I will share also over the weekend, we had a report of a stabbing in that area. We have been unable to locate the victim or the suspects, but we continue to investigate that. So I just wanted to kind of, bring you up to date on the conversations, regarding, concerns raised by the students. Bids are due back this Wednesday for public restroom shelters. And we're working on a program and timeline for the public engagement portion of this project prior to any final siting. I did share, I know the council is aware, that just for public, purposes, there's an order on the consent agenda tonight to award a bid. The city anticipates receiving a formal appeal of that bid. So while the council can go ahead and pass the order, we will not execute any contracts until the whole appeal process sees its way through. So just to kind of put you in mind of these there. Kind of a reminder, and I've had two other things come up today, so, because that's how it works. Our next council meeting on March 11th, we will have 3 councilors absent due to their attendance at National League of Cities. So if there are other councilors who are going to be unable to attend that night, if you could let us know, because, okay, now we're down to 5.
I'm in Florida.
All right, so a quorum is 5, so if you have one other person
I'm
who,
gonna be there, I'm there.
all right, so
Repeat that date again, Debbie.
March 11th.
March 11th.
Okay, so I'll have to make a note that Sue's gone March.
So if you want ice cream for dinner on the agenda in all schools.
Okay, so good to know. We're at 5. You just need 5 for a quorum, so there, we're good there. A couple of other things that came in, we did, there was a, Maine Health Alert Network System, a health advisory issued today. It is related to, individuals, diagnosed with HIV among people who inject drugs in the Penobscot County. Over the last 5 years, there's been an average of 2 new HIV diagnoses per year in Penobscot County residents and 1 new case per year among, people who inject drugs. In a 5-month period, the CDC has identified 3 new HIV diagnoses among people who inject drugs in Penobscot County. So that alert system went out today. CDC met today. They will continue to meet with our local partners, and we'll just continue to help them participate and support those efforts wherever we can. The last item is I hope you, last week, I sent an email to our legislative delegation, kind of cheering them on as they come to the finish line as it relates to GA. We did pull up the governor's supplemental budget, the LD 2214 Part II. There is a provision in the supplemental state budget which would limit municipalities from exceeding maximum levels of general assistance past 30 days in a 12-month period for any household. Just to give you a sense of it, the maximum benefits are all determined by the state, assigned by the state of Maine. In the city of Bangor, the maximum benefit eligible under general assistance is $886 a month for an individual. So if you're an individual with no income and you find yourself in a situation, you're eligible for $886 worth of benefits. I'm not sure how that's going to meet anyone's individual's basic needs. A lot of this really stems from the fact it appears that there was a high use of hotels as temporary housing, and that has significantly driven up the GA budget at the state level. So now that the GA budget is, tight, now they want to implement changes that would limit an emergency designation to a 30-day period. I will tell you that, we certainly have some individuals, but if you limit it to that point, you are likely going to put a number of individuals in harm's way. They will not be able to meet their basic needs. And it's likely that you will see an increase in the number of individuals who no longer have housing because of this. So we all seem to be all in GA. So I did go ahead and submit testimony, and you'll get a copy of it later tonight. And I will obviously copy our legislative delegation. So I felt GA was a pretty safe bet. We've been all in on GA. And that's the end of my manager updates.
Questions for the city manager?
I will go to executive session under 1 MRSA 4056A personnel matter, executive session 1 MRSA 4056D, American Federation of State, County and Municipal Employees, Airport Security, executive session 1 MRSA 4056D, International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO.
Second.
Motion, we have a second roll call vote. Counselor Fish? You're on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Counselor Leonard.
Yes.
Counselor Trumbull.
Yes.
Counselor Dean.
Yes.
Counselor Hawes.
Yes.
Counselor Schaefer.
Yes.
Counselor Yakubaga.
Yes.
Counselor Fournier.
No.
Oh, Counselor Fournier. We're all there. Counselor Fournier